All right, so we're diving deep today
Mm.
into a real cinematic gem. We're talking House of Flying Daggers.
Yeah, this one's special.
It is this 2004 wuxia film set in Tang Dynasty, China. Intrigue, rebellion. Visually, it's just stunning.
Oh, absolutely. A feast for the
And we're
eyes.
going to unpack it all, the production, the visuals,
Mm.
complex characters, the historical context. We even found some interesting fan reactions to those early home media releases.
Oh, yeah, those were something else.
Yeah, some strong opinions out there. But before we get to all that, I think it's worth highlighting that House of Flying Daggers, this wasn't just another action flick for director Zhang Yimou. It marked a real turning point in his career.
Right, it's a departure, moving away from that realism he was known for, and venturing into, well, a more stylized approach to filmmaking, more visual.
Yeah, and Zhang Yimou was already a huge name in Chinese cinema.
Right.
Part of that fifth generation of filmmakers. They were kind of the rebels, pushing boundaries, breaking away from the old ways.
Exactly. To understand this shift, you got to look at what came before. Decades of Chinese cinema dominated by socialist realism. Think idealized workers, revolutionary struggles, very propagandistic. The fifth generation, they came of age after the Cultural Revolution. They wanted something different, new forms of expression.
So within this group of groundbreaking filmmakers, what made Zhang Yimou stand out?
Well, many of his contemporaries, while they rejected that socialist realism, they still stuck to stories grounded in contemporary Chinese society. Zhang, he went back in time, historical settings, he explored individual desires, and the messiness of human relationships.
And then with House of Flying Daggers, he just goes all in on wuxia.
Full embrace. Wuxia, with the martial arts, chivalry, often those fantastical elements, it gave him a bigger canvas to work with, to explore love, betrayal, sacrifice, all against this backdrop of ancient China, political turmoil, social upheaval.
But even with all the praise, the visuals, some critics like A.O. Scott from the New York Times, they found it a bit cold. Is that a fair critique?
It's a valid point, definitely comes up a lot. Is it all style, no substance, or is there something deeper, more emotional? I think it's up to each viewer to decide. But I do think sometimes that critique reflects a tendency in the West to maybe overemphasize the exotic, the spectacular in Chinese cinema, and overlook the nuances.
Right, right. Well, before we get too deep into those nuances, let's give our listeners a taste of the plot. Tang Dynasty China, 859 AD, corruption is rampant, rebel groups are rising, and in the midst of it all, a love triangle.
Classic wuxia. Two officers, Liu and Jin, tasked with infiltrating the Flying Daggers, a powerful rebel group. They get entangled with Mei. She's a captivating blind dancer, suspected of being tied to the rebellion. And as they try to untangle the truth, they're pulled into a web of deceit. Identities are fluid, loyalties are tested.
And all of this unfolds against this backdrop of breathtaking visuals. Speaking of which, we can't talk about House of Flying Daggers without mentioning the tragic passing of Anita Mui. This was before filming began.
It's true.
Yes.
She was originally cast in a major role, but her death led Zhang Yimou to revise the script rather than replace her. The film's dedicated to her memory. And this tragedy, it highlights the dedication of the rest of the cast. Zhang Zi, who plays Mei, she lived with a blind girl for 2 months to prepare. And Takeshi Kaneshiro, who plays Jin, he even pushed through a leg injury he got on set.
Wow, that's dedication. Makes you appreciate their performances even more. But, the first thing that struck me about House of Flying Daggers was those visuals, the action sequences, especially that echo game in the brothel and the fight in the bamboo forest. Breathtaking. The choreography, the sound design, it's all so well crafted. But there's more to it than just that, right?
Oh, absolutely. Zhang Yimou doesn't just use beautiful imagery for the sake of spectacle. He infuses it with meaning. Take that echo game sequence, for instance. Beyond the spectacle, it works as a metaphor for the deception, the hidden motives within the film. And his use of color is particularly striking.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. There's this wuxing color theory, right?
Yeah.
That supposedly influenced the film's visuals.
Wuxing color theory. Fascinating system. It links colors to specific elements and emotions, deeply rooted in Chinese philosophy and art. White, for example, represents metal, can be associated with grief, purity. You see this in the snowy landscapes, incredibly beautiful, but also a sense of isolation, foreboding. Red, the color of fire that signifies passion and danger. You see it in the costumes, especially Mei's, hinting at the danger she represents to the men drawn to her. And green. Green represents wood, often linked with growth, but also anger. This is all over the bamboo forest. It's both beautiful and treacherous.
So the colors are not just random choices. They're deliberate, meant to enhance the narrative, the emotional impact.
Exactly. They add layers of meaning. Viewers might not even consciously pick up on it, but it all adds to the film's overall effect.
And at the center of it all is Mei. Zhang Zi's performance is just captivating, strength and vulnerability. It's no surprise she got so much praise for this role.
She embodies Mei's complexity. She's a skilled fighter, captivating dancer, and a master manipulator. She navigates a world that underestimates her, yet she holds a power that disrupts the lives of those around her.
Almost fits the archetype of a femme fatale, doesn't she? That alluring figure who leads men astray, plays on their desires, and ultimately brings about their downfall. But there's more to Mei than that, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. While she shares some traits with the classic femme fatale, Zhang Yimou gives her more agency, more depth. We see her struggle with her own loyalties, torn between her feelings for these men and her dedication to her cause. That complexity makes her so compelling.
It seems like Zhang Yimou is playing with our expectations, taking those familiar tropes and subverting them to create a more nuanced, multifaceted female character. And of course, we can't forget that ending. Without giving anything away, it's safe to say it stays with you. More questions than answers.
The ending of House of Flying Daggers, ambiguous, open to interpretation. It's a tragedy, but it's also a moment of profound choice for the characters. And that ambiguity, it's intentional. Zhang Yimou doesn't want to give us a neat little resolution. He wants us to wrestle with the film's complex questions.
And one of the most interesting things about that ending is how it ties into that poem by Lianian, the one about a woman whose beauty can overthrow a city just with a glance.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. It's a brilliant connection. Zhang Yimou loves weaving in literary references. In this poem, it adds another layer to Mei's character. She's not just a pawn in some political game. She's a force of nature, capable of toppling empires. And that idea, it resonates throughout the film, even in the seemingly simple choices like the colors, the locations.
It's all connected.
Yeah.
And yet with all this artistry, there was some frustration from fans about those home media releases.
Yeah.
The DVD and Blu-ray versions, they didn't quite capture the film's visual grandeur.
It's a valid complaint. House of Flying Daggers demands to be seen in all its visual splendor. Those vibrant colors, the costumes, the landscapes. A 4K remaster would be amazing.
Fingers crossed. Because House of Flying Daggers is a film that's meant to be experienced, not just watched.
Absolutely. It really is. And speaking of experiencing the film, your thoughts on that ending? What resonated with you?
I think for me, it was that sense of inevitability, like how those choices, they just lead them to that tragic end. But there's this lingering question, right? Could things have been different? Was there another path?
That's what's so brilliant about Zhang Yimou. He doesn't give you those easy answers, simple resolutions. The ending, it's like the culmination of all those choices, big and small. And the snowy landscape, it plays a role too, that finality.
You're so right. It's more than just a backdrop. It transforms the world around them, almost like a shroud. Cold, stark beauty.
And thinking about those choices, that final confrontation, Jin and Leo, it almost feels like a dance, doesn't it? Absolutely. Zhang Yimou, he's a master of blending action and artistry. The fight choreography, so fluid, so expressive. It goes beyond just physical skill. It's how they communicate their emotions. Desperation, rage, even the rhythm of the fight changes as their emotional states shift, like a visual representation of their inner turmoil.
It's funny because the first time I watched it, I was so caught up in the suspense, the visuals, I probably missed some of that. It's easy to get swept away by the excitement.
That's what makes repeat viewing so rewarding. Each time you watch it, you notice new things, details that deepen your understanding. It's like peeling back layers. You find hidden depths.
I wonder what Zhang Yimou would say about all the interpretations out there. I read somewhere that he deliberately leaves those endings open, invites the audience to draw their own conclusions.
That ambiguity is part of his style. He's not about dictating a message, a moral. He trusts his audience to engage with the material, to grapple with those complex questions. And that's what elevates it, I think. It's not just a genre film, it's an experience, a conversation starter. Makes you reflect.
This deep dive has definitely done that for me. Learning about the historical context, the wuxia color theory, the actor's dedication, it's given me a whole new appreciation for the film.
It's amazing, right, how those behind-the-scenes details can enrich our understanding. It makes you think, what made Zhang Yimou make such a big shift in his career? He was already successful, known for those realistic dramas. Why embrace this more stylized, action-packed approach?
It's a good question. Purely artistic evolution. Wanting to experiment with a new genre. Or was there something more practical at play?
It's probably a bit of both. On the one hand, artists evolve, they look for new challenges, new ways to express themselves, but the film industry, it's a business. And Zhang Yimou, he was working in a changing world.
Right, Chinese cinema was gaining global recognition. Wuxia, with its visuals, the action, had international appeal.
Exactly. So it's possible that Zhang Yimou, while pursuing his artistic vision, was also thinking about reaching a wider audience, and his casting choices, they kind of support that.
Casting Takeshi Kaneshiro, a huge star in Japan, and Andy Lau, an icon in Hong Kong cinema, definitely broadened the film's appeal.
A smart move. Contributed to the film's success for sure. And remember, this was 2004. Long before streaming services made international films so accessible, Zhang Yimou was already thinking globally, understanding the power of cross-cultural casting.
He was ahead of the curve.
Eh.
And looking back, he clearly succeeded. House of Flying Daggers, it's a landmark in wuxia cinema, influenced so many films that came after. Raised the bar for action, cinematography, and storytelling.
No doubt. It proved that wuxia could be more than just style. It could be a way to explore deep themes, emotions. It's just a shame those early home media releases didn't capture its visual beauty. That 4K remaster would be something else.
Agreed. But, even without the 4K, what do you think is the most important takeaway for viewers? What should they keep in mind when they watch House of Flying Daggers?
For me, it's that the film works on multiple levels. Yes, it's visually stunning, action-packed, but it's also deeply symbolic, emotionally resonant. It grabs your attention, challenges your perceptions, stays with you. There's always something new to discover.
Could have said it better myself. It's a film that rewards you for paying attention, for really thinking about it. It makes you think about the power of visual storytelling, how every single element, the colors, the locations, they all play a role.
It's true. Think about those locations for a second. The Carpathian Mountains in Ukraine, the snowy scenes that create this feeling of isolation, this harsh beauty. It mirrors the characters, their journeys, and the bamboo forest in China. It's practically a character itself,
right?
Full of hidden dangers, shifting perspectives, like that web of deceit they're all caught in.
It's like those landscapes that become these metaphors for their struggles, their desires, the betrayals.
Everything's connected.
It's all connected.
Zhang Yimou, he's a master at using those environments to really amp up the emotion of the story. It's not just a pretty background. He weaves those visuals into the narrative.
Makes me wonder if sometimes, as viewers, we get too focused on the surface level of these action films. We get caught up in the fights and maybe miss those deeper layers, the stuff Zhang Yimou's carefully crafting.
It's easy to do. You get drawn in by the spectacle. But House of Flying Daggers, it rewards you if you pay attention. Look beyond the surface, the symbolism, the colors, how those landscapes reflect what's going on inside the character.
Almost like he's challenging us to be more active viewers, to really engage with the film intellectually, emotionally.
And that's what makes it so good. It's not passive. It stays with you. You talk about it. You think about it. It makes you feel things long after it's over.
That's what makes a film great. It goes beyond entertainment. It becomes something more. It sticks with you. And as we wrap up this deep dive into House of Flying Daggers, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about. If you could ask Zhang Yimou one question about this film, what would it be? What's the most intriguing thing about his choices, his vision, his storytelling?
That is a fantastic question to consider. What detail, what scene, what character stays with you? House of Flying Daggers. It's a film full of symbols, ambiguity, open to interpretation. Asking yourself that one question, finding your own answers, that's the best way to keep exploring this world that Zhang Yimou created.
So to everyone listening, if you haven't seen House of Flying Daggers, go find it, watch it, and even if you have, watch it again with fresh eyes. Think about what we've talked about, the artistry, the intention behind it. What will you discover? What questions will you have? Let us know.